Oftentimes when people say dynamic duo, it evokes something along the lines of Batman and Robin, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, or, well, I've exhausted all of my superhero knowledge. Never was quite my thing. Anyway, McKenzie Cowlbeck and Stephanie Monser from the Oklahoma Public Health Association are definitely a dynamic duo, but I would never dare insinuate that one was the sidekick to the other. As my interview with them went on and we kept peeling the layers of the onion, we uncovered how well they complement each other in how they approach public health, their passion issues, and of course, their origin stories. It's no wonder that by their powers combined, they've revived OPHA's policy committee and have turned it into a thriving policy powerhouse. I had a lot of fun with this one, and I think all three of us had really exciting and enlightening moments, piecing together questions no one had really asked us before. And yes, I say we and us because I think at one point I even started interviewing myself. Listen to three people who pay way too much attention to Oklahoma policy, break out the red yarn and cork board to connect every policy back to health. Here they are, the incredible McKenzie and Stephanie from Oklahoma Public Health Association. And on to the interview. I am here with McKenzie and Stephanie from Oklahoma Public Health Association. And before we get too much into that number and word salad that we all love so much in the public health and just nonprofit world, Oklahoma Public Health Association will be called OPHA over and over and over. Well, before we get, too busy chatting and having fun, can you both introduce yourselves and kind of give a background of who you are?
Yeah. Do you want to go first, Stephanie?
Sure. My name's Stephanie Monser. I'm involved in quite a few different groups, but Mackenzie and I met during our masters and hit it off, and we reconnected after I graduated, and here we are.
That is so cool.
Yeah. But my name is McKenzie Cowlbeck. My pronouns are she, her. I am the policy director and does a lot of other things at the Oklahoma Public Health Association, OPHA. I guess recently graduated my master in public health and I found my way to public health. But my background is from public health, more so in like the math and sciences world. And then I stumbled my way into policy.
Yeah. So I know that you all kind of splashed onto the scene, I feel like recently, at least from my perspective. Can you all give a kind of rundown of like what OPHA is and what you all do?
So it's chapter. It's Oklahoma's state chapter of the American Public Health Association. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan, and we have actually been around since 1939, if you can believe that. It's very strange to say. But I think you are right on in saying that we've kind of are reinventing ourselves and coming back to the forefront. OPHA really had our knees knocked out from under us because of COVID, like all of public health, not just here in the US, but around the world. But why we were particularly hit hard, and I think are having a particularly noteworthy resurgence right now, is because we are almost entirely volunteer run. And so we had a massive turnover in not just who our volunteers were at the time, but we lost all of our historical knowledge. We switched from being mostly in person to fully virtual, unless we want to go do fun things like Advocacy Day and whatnot. And a little bit more about OPHA is that we're a membership association. So we're trying to serve the people of Oklahoma who join our association. And we have a number of different interest-based groups that are doing all their different things.
Can you just give us a little bit, like, I think I got kind of like two things, which is like, what's y'all's mission, I guess? Because as we all know, public health is huge. Like, what's y'all's mission in Oklahoma, even nationally? And how has it been trying to revive it?
I think the mission, our formal mission is a little long and wordy. So what we have, what I've been like pared it down to is to protect and promote population level health in Oklahoma through education, practice, and advocacy. And so I think
that is so succinct. Oh, that was really good. That was a good one.
That was good. Yeah.
That was good.
Thank you so much. So to that point of education, practice, and advocacy, I think the best way to frame why we're coming back onto the scene, and honestly the most truthful reason why we're coming back onto the scene, is because since COVID, the American Public Health Association has been trying to pour into its affiliates, especially affiliates in conservative states, or in less like political sense, just states that are struggling with public health. And we got a grant a few years ago to just get started on public health authority work. But because of that, I came on board and there's more interest in supporting OPHA. And that happened to be through policymaking and advocacy. And so the funding that we got put into OPHA focused on policy and advocacy, which is where we've seen so much growth in public facing involvement. Growing as an organization came from us getting started and better situated in policymaking and advocacy. And that only happened, as far as I have historical knowledge of OPHA, until a few years ago.
So, I love a good campy movie. I love a good campy movie. And so there's a line in Legally Blonde where Professor Callahan is like, oh, I think she woke up one day and said, I'm going to become a lawyer. I feel like that is every single person who touches the policy world. Like,
That's true.
Every single one. No one actually wakes up and says, I'm going to go follow the legislature today.
Mhm.
So I guess my question to both of you then is like, what was that moment? How did you fall into this of doing this, just, following the legislature, even
Yeah.
on that day to day, like McKenzie and Stephanie, the higher level? Like, what got you there?
Well, I actually wanted to do medical school, and then I took the MCAT for 7 hours and realized, wow, this is kind of ridiculous.
Sorry, I have to jump in there real quick because that is the exact same story of me going to law school. I did the LSAT and I'm like, I don't want to do this now.
Yeah, I was like,
It's not fun.
this is kind of ridiculous. But I took a policy and ethics and then a quality class, and Bratzler was actually telling us all of the mistakes with medications because they look the same. And as someone who has had rheumatoid arthritis since 2, I'm like, wow, people making mistakes in this field is kind of nuts. And policy touches way more people than a doctor could. So I kind of leaned into that. And he actually held me after class once and he was like, you should go into this. And I'm like, yeah, why not?
That is
He just
amazing. McKenzie, how did you fall into this? Because I think it's interesting between the two of you. Stephanie, you tend to talk and focus on these higher level concepts, where me and McKenzie are the ones who are complaining about a specific word in a specific bill from a specific amendment by a specific author. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you fall into
down.
that real
Yeah.
specific stuff?
Yeah. So I originally found public health actually during COVID, like so many of us did, but I had bounced around like 7 different majors in undergrad and eventually actually took a 5th year. I took an extra semester. But right whenever COVID was starting, I was actually in a disability studies class because I'm disabled. I was born with something called fibular hemimelia. And I happened to figure out that my professor got her MPH, and she pulled me aside kind of similarly and was like, I think you really like public health. And so I ended up taking an extra semester, taking more public health classes, and one of them was a policy class. And I was like, this is pretty sweet. I don't know about policy though. And once I got into my MPH and decided to pursue that, I got started on nurse practitioner scope of practice.
You're one of the few people I've talked to who actually, both of you are some of the few people I've talked to who kind of did stumble into this on purpose.
Yeah.
So few people do.
Yeah. And I mean, even I think I definitely stumbled into public health, but as soon as I was getting to be exposed to the different fields, even epi and biostats versus policy versus promotion education, I have always been a math girly. Like I did way too much physics in undergrad, but I was drawn to the policy of it. And I think more than anything, because watching COVID kind of unravel around us and watching the country, it's never been good. It's never been equitable. It's never been fair, but particularly start falling apart, and other just personal things in my life, I kind of got woken up to, oh, this is all really unjust. And I feel really compelled to be a part of this collective effort. And from a public health perspective, the foundation of that is policy. And that's as low as you can go. And so that was just really appealing to me.
So I'll put out my little my cringe and how I landed in really found interest in public health is I think it was I had to do a write-up, like kind of a quasi like
Yeah.
policy
Oh,
write-up
yeah.
back in college, and it was an exercise for my master's, and I stumbled into adult toy law. I did.
I wheezed just
It is
then.
fascinating
Oh my
I bet it
gosh,
is.
because
yeah.
it it includes Ted Cruz in a legal brief to one of the circuit courts that adult toys lead to adultery. Oh no, it's akin to adultery. That is a legal statement
Oh.
made by Ted Cruz. So
But I'm just not even surprised that he's intertwined in that.
you all are working in your data, your you know your maybe your day job, or even like working at the legislature or watching the legislature or reading
Mhm.
something. Like, what is something that you each have seen that just is like, oh god?
I ended up hosting a policy panel at OPHA's 2023 conference. And one of our speakers was Representative Cynthia Rowe, who is the chair of the House Public Health Committee. And so, in theory, she's like pretty high on the priority list for a policymaker and legislator to have on your good side and to not to not offend. And I was checking her in to a conference, and she ended up like walking away before I was finished like checking her in. And I
The pauses are
the
so
pause.
good.
It's thanks. I accidentally told her to halt. I like
Of all words.
I know.
halt. I literally yelled to her halt, and she responded as the most embarrassing thing. And she turned around and she was like, "Yeah." And she came back. She came back. And she just went about her merry way.
No, this is the type of story is what I'm looking for. I love that you told her to halt. It's so funny.
She halted. That's the most horrifying thing is that she did. She did halt.
Okay, Stephanie.
I have family like all over rural Oklahoma. So I had just started taking policy and ethics, and we went down to southeastern Oklahoma to visit family. And I love my family. I really do. But they have strong political stances. And so I'm talking to them about all of these policies that we had been researching and how it's going to better Oklahoma. Did grandma always say, don't talk politics with family? Guess we should like definitely reinforce this because
Yeah.
I mean, I had always heard that like rural areas are more strong with their politics, but that was the first time I had ever encountered it with family. And it's like it's also family. Like you're gonna be seeing them for the rest of your life. So like we just cut it off there. And yeah. It was wild. It got wild after that too.
So let's get into some of the meatier policy type stuff. Part of the reason I asked you all to join is one, I find you both a delight, and I really like with the work that you're doing, of course. But can you give just I know this is an entire master's, and it sounds like both of you have gotten this entire master's, but can you give like a little overview of kind of like what public health is?
So for me, I think public health means equality of access to these health resources, mainly because of my family in these rural areas. So them deciding to go to Fort Smith, Arkansas to receive care rather than to Oklahoma City. So a lot of these like CHW bills like are really impactful there. And I think that a lot of people believe, like what happens in Oklahoma City and Tulsa can also happen in these rural areas, which just aren't true.
Can you just throw out there, what is a CHW bill?
The community health worker bill.
Oh, okay. Okay. And then, sorry, once more, can you explain what the community health worker bill is? I know it's long, but I think you could wrap it up.
I mean, to me, it would mean giving these rural areas access to better and different health opportunities. So rather than just a simple urgent care, they can go to see a nurse practitioner and get a full, either if it's like a well woman's visit or a just regular, just kind of once over to check everything out rather than, okay, well, I have the flu and I guess I should go to the ER because that's the closest thing that I have. So this just gives them a different access point, I guess.
That's cool. So you're
Mhm.
thinking of it from like the an intervention at a very community level to help the access of the clinician and the type of access on a broader population level in rural
Right.
areas.
Yeah. So for me, I there was a phrase that one of my public health professors said in my one of my very first public health classes, and that is long gone. I wrote it on a sticky note at some point. I don't know what happened to that sticky note among all the other sticky notes I make, but the impression that it left on me and that I've kind of carried through to today um, is that public health is the population level approach to constantly trying to improve health outcomes, and also not just health outcomes in a clinical sense, but the quality of life that people get to live, and whether that be in a healthcare setting or even more like a justice societal level way. But it's like a constant strive for better for everyone, whether that be through epi and whether that be through whatever subfield of public health there is, like policy, whether that's epi, whether it's biostats, program implementation, planning, all that kind of stuff. It's the constant, we can do more and we deserve more and we can do better at this field and consider everyone at a community level in doing so. Because I think, like Stephanie mentioned at some point, the individual level is one thing and it's great, but you can do a whole lot more at a more foundational level through looking at everyone.
I just want to point this out to you, and I don't know if anyone has ever pointed this out to both of you because then maybe they haven't heard like that answer side by side. Stephanie, when I talk to you about policy and bills, you take the high approach, top level, and then McKenzie, you take the much more detailed approach, and yet you both defined public health opposite. I mean, in my opinion, you did both like describe public health. Like it just, McKenzie, you should get like, oh, criminal justice and, all these. And McKenzie, or sorry, and then Stephanie, it was this one policy would help so many people. Like it's just you guys, that
Yeah,
was a really, really funny switch between
yeah.
between knowing how you approach and talk about policy versus how you probably define public health. I think it's so cool. And it makes sense why you all are so effective. So I know that Matriarch and OPHA have a fake rivalry
I love it.
that I think I have stoked, but I think it's really funny.
And we took it and ran with it. So
Yeah, that's
I know
true. Yeah.
we put on stickers and we put it out there that all policy is health policy, whereas you all have the same swag, the same taglines of all health is public health. Obviously, fake rivalry aside, both of those statements are true.
Yes, they are.
They are just
Yeah.
they're true. But can you kind of go into a little bit like how that paints your approach, how that's different since, we use all policy, whereas you're using like health is public health. How do you
Mhm.
think that morphs how you are all thinking in your approach?
Yeah, and I Stephanie, if you don't mind me kicking this off, because I kind of spoke our little
Oh,
mantra
yeah,
into
go ahead.
existence. I started saying this in the policy committee that we co-chair, because we have a giant policy agenda, which we will get to later. But also per the question that we just answered of like, what is public health? That is the number one question I get. And despite having a million different answers to it that are all correct.
Right.
And if you, every time you say it, you'll probably think of a different answer depending on whatever, you're feeling in the public health world that day. But the easiest and most understandable solution that we kind of came up with was all health is public health. Like, what is not? There's very little that would not, and I probably couldn't name you something off the top of my head that is not affected by public health. That is not in some way under the purview of one of the multiple subdisciplines within public health.
I think of that. I
Thank
think
you.
of when we were at Bridges to Access and someone came up to us and said, like, like what you guys focus on is a lot. Have you ever thought about narrowing it down? I mean, we could, but all of these little things are some like criminal justice, like maternal health, like they all play a role in public health. Like they all hold hands somehow. So we can't really focus on one when all of these play a part. So that's why it's so broad or a longer focus, because we don't focus on just one.
If we all considered ourselves and we all united under the umbrella of public health, that is a very powerful and knowledge and experienced group that has a lot to offer to, and what we focus on, Stephanie and I, in the policy world, in Oklahoma's legislative process. And so if we can pull all those together, all those pieces and people and experiences and disciplines together, they can do a lot, not just for themselves individually and having those resources to bring to their own world, but in supporting one another and becoming more together, because public health can do so much more. If we can think of the people in public health who do policy and the people in public health who do epi and biostats as the same group or a similar group with similar goals and experiences and abilities to improve population health in Oklahoma, instead of having two disparate groups that, or however many dozens of disparate groups in public health across the state, we can have one.
I also really like hearing you two talk about kind of coming back to the slogan of all health is public health.
It's what we know. And so it's what we bring to the table. Like both of us and all three of us in the ways that we interact in this space. It's our passions and our experiences inform the work that we do and how passionately we bring it across. Yeah, for sure.
You mentioned earlier, and I've seen your policy agenda, and you mentioned your policy agenda is long, and it is long. I think we can all agree it is long, not shady. Yeah. It's just long. So this year, what have you all kind of from your policy agenda? What have you kind of focused in on, whether through your own passions or kind of what's happening?
I think about this a lot because of the grant work that I lead with the American Public Health Association here in Oklahoma. And I love I call it our big fat policy agenda. Oh my gosh. I refer to it in presentations like that. But what I can see from the bills that we're tracking and from the conversations that we're having in our policy committee is that public health authority, which I'm happy to expand upon, because that never makes sense to people off the bat.
I guarantee your discussions with people about the public health authority probably go about as well as my discussions talking about the maternal mortality review committee. I'm sure that these conversations really light up the party. Oh, yeah. People totally know what we're talking about.
Police powers. Oh yeah. But preemption, that pops up within our policy work and our focus, whether explicitly or not, it's there, just human rights. And a lot can get boiled down into that, whether that be women's rights, reproductive rights, queer rights to live and exist, voting rights, all of that, as diverse as that still even is those three: public health authority, preemption, and human rights.
I mean, for me, I think because I did research on reproductive health and assisted reproductive technology and how it is becoming more popular, I do focus more on women's health and reproductive health. So like I've helped on projects during my workday with adding doula coverage and midwifery, and hey, why don't we have a behavioral health tech come out and check on these moms? And they're like, wow, we wouldn't think of that. And I'm like, yeah, I can help with postpartum, or you can catch it early. And, especially when you've had someone close to you go through postpartum, it's tough to see.
I feel like every policy person, we all have one or two topics that we land on and never intended to. Yeah. For me, it's STIs, and I don't know how. I don't know how that happened. I cannot.
Here we are, though. Yeah.
Like I feel like I can't go more than like a day without saying STI at least 5 times. Stephanie, I'm sure that we've crossed paths a good number of times with implementation of policy, but with me now knowing so much about STIs and you focusing a lot on this repro and me knowing some repro, I'm sure we'll be crossing paths again soon in reference to syphilis in pregnant women, because every podcast needs the words syphilis in pregnant women.
Of course.
I think it's really, again, I keep coming back to like how you two are talking about like OPHA and how you talk about your approaches. And I'm really seeing like this from both of you forming of reaching out to community members and reaching out for, firsthand guidance. And again, I think it's one of those, I don't know if you two have ever really sat down to kind of answer these kind of questions, but it's really interesting. And I would hope that you'd go back and listen to this after we release it, because you can find your through lines for each of you. And it's really cool to hear it kind of develop. Because again, I don't think you've had that opportunity, or why would you have? Who would have that opportunity? It's really cool to hear, especially since again, that public health mindset of what is it? It's very intersectional. It's very social determinants. So I'm glad you all popped back up in the world.
You really homed in on something that Stephanie and I both see a lot of power in public health here in Oklahoma, is that since we both see a lot of opportunity and potential in OPHA because it is a nonprofit, nonpartisan 501c3 here in Oklahoma made of public health people. And public health people is broad. We get to decide as a membership association what we want to do and how we want to do it and who we want to do it for. And we do it for our members. And what our members are telling us is that they want more and they want to do it in this capacity. They want to do it through policymaking and advocacy. And so because we have absolutely god awful health outcomes and statistics here in Oklahoma. And so at least that's something I recognized really early on. And I don't know if you feel the same way, Stephanie, is that OPHA can do a lot. And it's taking time.
If I think of an organization that might meet some of the wants or connections that some of the members are wanting, I'll text McKenzie, which we talk every day. I'll text her and be like, what do you think about this organization? And it's really just hi, we're OPHA. We'd love to make a connection, support you guys, attend any of your events. If you want to support our events, just that kind of thing, which I really like.
What is your banner message? And what would you want to blast to everybody? From the rooftops, there's no mountains in Oklahoma as big as where I grew up, but from the highest mountain in Oklahoma or the highest oil derrick, what would you want to yell to everyone?
Yeah. Stephanie, do you have something you want to yell and then I can yell?
I mean, from what we just said, I was going to say to all organizations, come be friends.
Yeah, let's be friends.
Let's be friends. At different events, McKenzie's like, we should try to be friends with them. That's how we phrase it. Let's be friends with them.
And I think for me, it would just be to boil it all down and to simplify it of we're just going to try to make things better as public health people, as active, engaged public health people in Oklahoma. And if you're into that and you want to...
That's a great way to phrase it.
And if you want to clown around with us trying to learn how to do that, we're both new. And even though OPHA has been around for almost 100 years, wow, that's old. We're new at this, and we're babies, but we are kind of unabashedly and boldly trying to bring this type of active, engaged, empowered public health to life here in Oklahoma. And so, if you're into that, let us know and come be a member. And if not, we can at least be friends. And that's great too.
Do you all want to kind of put it into a nice package of, where they can find you, how they can join, all that great stuff?
One-stop shop will just be to go to our website. And that is www.opha.net. And if you want to join policy committee, what you'll do is go to www.opha.net/events. You'll find all the information that you need to get involved, to become a member, to see what benefits we have, and to see what else we offer besides the policy and advocacy stuff that we really hit on today.
I think I will follow up with just one question of that, and then we'll close it out and we'll have a dance party. I don't know what's going to happen. So what is the membership? What does it entail? Because I mean, obviously, I've seen your website, I've seen the tiers, and you have individual, you have organization. What do you get?
So you get to number one, which is important to our conversation. As members, you can actually join these committees that are the most influential within OPHA and like determining what OPHA does. You can also kind of serve as, not kind of, you would serve as a leader within OPHA. So if you are super into policy, you can kind of develop out something within OPHA if you're interested. But those are like the more involved things. You get a discount for our annual conference each year. We offer continuing education. So if you are into, there are some acronyms for you, CPH, CHES, or licensed social work. We offer those for free. I think student membership is $25, retirees $25, community health workers $25, and then at the regular $60. But you also get, as part of our membership, a big fat newsletter that I spend a lot of time developing each month. And that's actually a difference between regular like membership and then non-membership. We're trying not just to build out like a way to be involved with OPHA through advocacy and policymaking, but a way to have coverage and to be advocates for people who can't do so through their workplace or are made to feel like they cannot do so through their workplace. And so that it feels like it's not a big deal because it's just what me and Stephanie do, but that representation, I think, in the legislative process it's actually a pretty big deal. And there's some other things here and there, but you can find all those on our website.
This has been Policy in Pink, presented by Metriarch, a public health think tank dedicated to Oklahoma women. Join me, Tommy, and a parade of esteemed experts every other week as we discuss the political banter surrounding women's health. Find out more about the topics featured at matriarchok.org. That's Metriarch with an E, a fun little play on matriarch and metrics. You can also find us across social media as Metriarch OK. Thank you to our producer, Rant9 and Jesse Ulrich. And once again, my name is Tommy. And remember, all policy is health policy.